Right, well, welcome to your Future Work Scotland, to our September edition. Very excited about this session tonight. I'm your host, organiser of Future Work Scotland, Sathpal Singh, because me Sath. I'm joined by my co-organiser, Henderson. Paula's on as well. I think it's Paula, maybe. Paula's here. Gives a wave, Paula. So yeah, just a couple of quick intro points. So we have a simple code of conduct at Future Work Scotland. We just simply ask that you be respectful to one another. And everyone has a great experience. That's all we ask. We will do the usual sort of community shout outs at the end. We usually have a bunch of things we can share from across the community, other things that we're involved in, and other upcoming events that might be of interest to our community. And in terms of questions, Holger's going to have a nice, really engaging, interactive sort of session for us. You're going to be drawing and learning all sorts of fabulous tools, but we will have time for questions at the end. So if you do have some questions for Holger, just stick them into the chat, prefix them with a Q so the team and I can spot them, and we'll get to them later on in the session. So I'm thrilled to welcome Holger to Future Work Scotland. I first became aware of Holger's work through this book, which you might not be able to see because of my blurred screen. This Tendai was a past speaker for us. He spoke in 2020, and then I was blown away by the visuals in the book, which Holger did. He's got a copy there too. That's when I started to pay more attention to Holger's work, and he's been a real inspiration for me because I'm also a visual practitioner, a visual thinker, and I use it in my work. And I trained and did some vocabulary, etc. So I've been using that, and he's multi-talented. He's done a whole range of things. He's a visual strategist. He also writes children's fantasy books, which is just kind of completely blows my mind. And of course, really, his passion is to help people to take advantage of the power of visualization to support whatever it is they do. There's so much power in the tools, and I certainly would disagree with that because I hold exactly the same view. And really, I think the other thing that brings us together here is this fabulous book, which maybe you can see, Creating Clarity. I'm working my way through it. He's got a copy there too, so it's dialed. And it's brilliant, reading it now, I'm really enjoying it, and it's fantastic to have all you as I say. I'm super excited that he's joining us as a guest on Future Work Scotland. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Holger. Warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and welcome everybody. I'm really excited to see you all here today. It's late in the evening, so at least in Germany, it's 8 o'clock, and I hope we will get an energized crowd here and do something fun together. I've planned some things in advance that I want to talk to you about and that I want to do with you, but always feel free to interrupt with questions in the chat, basically. We will see what comes up. I'm happy to address questions and follow a bit the flow of you being here. That's kind of the advantage of being live instead of having a recorded session. So please feel free to ask anything that's on your mind. And if you have already questions, you can start popping them in. I will do a very quick introduction as well to those people who don't know me yet. And then we will start with the content. So let me see if that still works. We tested that before. And you should see an iPad screen, or basically a white screen with a hand on it. Yeah, I see a thumbs up. That's good. I always basically start with that introduction. Perhaps at some time I will do a new one, but actually I have to draw a new one because everything that matters is my family. I'm father of 3 kids, married, living in Cologne, Germany. But the baby on the arms of the mother is now 8 years old. So I really need to draw that again, that picture. Don't tell them. We're living not only as a family here, but we have kind of a small zoo as well. So we're having a dog, we have 2 cats, we have 3 rabbits and 2 horses. So life is always busy. And when I started my journey, I always knew that I want to design new worlds and create stories and create pictures as well and imagine things that are not here yet. But everybody told me that this is not a career you could follow. So what I tried to do is I studied architecture, which was a big failure. And I stopped at the university after 1.5 years, didn't know what to do, and made the logic step of becoming a carpenter, because I thought, like, I don't know, I want to do something with my hands, and did an apprenticeship as a carpenter. That wasn't enough for me. I thought I want to do more than, in quotes, just building furnitures, because I still wanted to create new stuff. I went to the university again and studied communication design, which is kind of a mix of graphic design, photo design, psychology, marketing, all that kind of nice stuff. And while I was doing that, I was as well a teacher at an art school here close by Cologne, teaching pupils painting with oil, acrylics, watercolors, pencil, all that kind of stuff. So all that together led to my first jobs in 2009, when I started my self-employment as a designer, and very, very soon as well as a graphic recorder. I think I started in 2011 or 2010. It might be 2010, end of 2010, beginning of 2011, when I had my first graphic recording jobs, which is basically taking live notes of what people say. And I built that practice over time, started to teach as well business people how to draw in the style I draw. I had an app actually for visual facilitation for a while that I stopped a few years ago, the Work Visual app, and built my practice further into coaching and facilitation. So what I do nowadays is help people understand where they are, developing new ideas, basically for where they want to get to, using business model innovation, the value proposition design logics, Scrum. I am a certified product owner as well as a certified Scrum Master. I'm using storytelling as well as working on the culture of companies and helping them working differently than they did before. So all of that is what I do nowadays, helping companies basically create some clarity around all these complex topics. And I found my love as well for writing. So I have published quite a few books. So first of all, during the pandemic, I thought it would be good to have people practicing some drawing. So I started publishing drawing books, as well as I co-created the book Pirate in the Navy, which is about corporate innovation. I brought out a business comic for kids, which is learning how to think entrepreneurial as a kid, and hopefully changing the way kids are taught at school as well, how you can think creatively and test ideas before you do them. And last but not least, that was creating clarity that we saw here as well last year. This year is more under the umbrella of kids' books and children's books. So I published one children's book already, and another one will follow very soon. And I will do more in that regards as well. So I'm writing a fantasy novel too. So you see, I'm a multi-passionate creator. I do what I feel like I want to do while I want to do my main job, which is the facilitation with the clients. So that's me. And now I would like to start jumping into some myth about all the topics we talk about all the time, which is, we talk a lot about agile, right? We talk a lot about creativity, design thinking, customer centricity, all those kind of buzzwords. And I thought this meeting would be a good opportunity to just clarify some of the myth and paint a big picture of how I see all this coming together. And I hope you follow me along. And when I say you follow me along, I really invite you to take a pen and take notes, because what I do is very visual. So you want perhaps to take some notes to remember what I said, but I think we will send over the pictures as well. And perhaps we have some visual thinkers here as well that want to take visual notes too, not looking at specific people from Berlin. Let's see. You should see my camera now in my hands. Yes? Can you see that? Yes, good. Thank you. Okay, wonderful. So we will have 12 myths. The first one is the customer knows what they need. That's our first myth. And we often think that the customer knows what they think But I would argue most people just know what they want, but they don't know what they really need. So it's a question of understanding the customer a bit better in terms of what do they actually need, and asking them the right questions to find out what it is. I'm just saying, for example, what I want, right, is being more healthy, right? And therefore, perhaps I would say, I need some more healthy food. But what I really need is sport. You would only find that out if you would have a proper way to run experiments with me, to talk to me as a customer, to find out what I really need. The second myth is it always starts with the customer. You hear that a lot, right? It always starts with the customer. And I would disagree. And I invite you to disagree with me, of course, if you want to. But I would say sometimes everything you do starts with the customer. But often enough, it's not only the customer that kind of influences what you do, but it might be as well the market, like the global development of things. It might be as well the market in terms of the users and customers of that customer. Or something else from the other side could influence as well what you need to develop as a business, which might be regulations that are fresh on the market. That might be new or old technology. We know that from the current trends of AI, right? That could influence how your business looks like. It could be your own idea of a value proposition, independent of a customer. You might have a great idea and you bring that to fruition with the customer. So I would say we shouldn't be so strict on saying it always has to start with the customer. But I would say we should say it should end with the customer. It's always ending with the customer, because the customer is basically the one that you want to find out about, that you want to sell to, and all that kind of thing. So that would be the second myth. The third, data never lies. You know, nowadays, we often think that data is the ultimate true and we can learn everything from data. But in my personal experience, and I think you might have experienced that yourself, for example, with emails, if you send a newsletter, for example, right? You never know for sure, are all the emails reaching those people who you send it to? My dashboard says I have an open rate of 55% of my emails. But is that really the truth? Do really 55 people open my emails? Is it more because some of the providers are blocking it? Depending on how you look at the data, it might come up differently. So what you have to do is basically ask people and reach out to them again and identify, get evidence, basically, if the data is true. Data for me is always just the start. You want to find evidence that the data is actually right, because what you're doing is you deal with people. You don't deal with data in most cases, depending on your job, of course. Then, next up is agile is faster. That's our fourth myth, right? We often think that agile is faster because we can do everything when it comes to agile. It's possible to sprint all the time. And I would say that is as well not true, because what we try to do is learning faster, right? Agile is about understanding what you have at hand, creating a solution that is as simple as possible to build, sharing your solution with somebody who can give you feedback. That might be your stakeholders, your customers, your friends and family sometimes even, and repeating that cycle again and again. It's not about running faster all the time. It's not about finishing a product faster. It's just about learning faster. That's what agile for me is. And if we run into the trap of being faster all the time, we might be exhausted at the end very much, right? Fifth myth. Design thinking requires an innovation lab. It's one of my favorites, right? We need to have a space for creativity. I would say that's not true, because what is basically design thinking? If you look at design thinking, It's empathizing, it's a difficult word for a German to say, with your customers, understanding your customers again, right? How could we serve them in a proper way? Defining the status quo, what's kind of the challenge to solve, what's the need of the customer, developing ideas, creating a prototype or like a solution, and testing that solution with the customer, right? That's what design thinking basically is. So if you look at all these steps, design thinking can be done everywhere, I would say, right? For example, you go out of the building, talk to your customers and empathize, right? You have a meeting inside your office room to define the status quo. You have a nice place where you design, where you ideate and create new ideas. So I would argue design thinking can be done everywhere, right? I just said everywhere here. Don't get trapped that you need good environment, good tools, whatever it is. You can do that everywhere. 6, it has to be perfect. Not sure, perhaps you write that in the chat who feels like pointed out with that, but a lot of the times we feel that we have to be perfect, that it needs to be, everything needs to be perfect. But when it comes to acting agile, when it comes to embracing design thinking and creativity, it's not about the perfect product or the perfect pitch or even the perfect presentation. Because what I do here, some of the strokes are pretty loose and I write something, I miss something, doesn't matter. It's not about being perfect. It's building prototypes and things that people can relate to. So just with the phrase good enough, you make so much more progress than if you always try to be perfect, right? I decided it's not for me. I am a natural perfectionist, right? It's really hard for me not to be perfect, but life is much easier if I don't force it too much all the time. And I would invite you to do that too, right? The 7th myth that I see all the time is creativity is just fun and games. You might have heard that before, that it's a lot of fun doing these things and you have these brainstorming sessions and you have all this, the colorful sticky notes and all that kind of stuff. But I think creativity is not really just fun and games, because I'm coming from a university. I studied design at the university. We had rules to follow, right? Pretty clear rules to follow. We have to have like a system in place where we meet and where we have regular exercises. We have to do that with people together. So basically, it needs a whole system, and I would say discipline, because if you are not disciplined in creativity, it might be just fun and games, but with the discipline, you will actually create something worthwhile. So I would invite all of you to say, if you really want to be creative, it's not about having that fancy space, but it's always the intention of being creative and having the discipline to really go through the pain as well when you try to find solutions for something that doesn't show up in that moment right away. Okay, continuing with the next one is the 8th. We need to use the right system. I'm not sure how many people we have here in corporate, in a corporate employment job or something, but with my clients, often enough, I hear that phrase of, we need to use the right system, right? Now we need to do everything with Scrum. Now we need to do everything with design thinking. Now we need to follow this and that. And I would say it's not that, right? It's basically what you make out of it. So for some processes, you use, for example, just Agile. Agile for me is more like a framework, a thinking framework of being like fast in your learning, being flexible, doing iterations. You might use design thinking to funnel your thoughts and ideas, as well as finding other ways of flows and stuff to, for example, then execute your ideas. But it's just your system. It's not about the system that everybody uses. You need to build kind of a portfolio of different systems that work for you and adapt them step by step. I hope that makes sense so far and you can follow me. All good by now? Yeah? Okay, cool. The 9th is you can solve everything with a sprint. It's one of my other favorite myths that we have nowadays. You can solve everything with the sprint, right? But if you think of your daily practice and what you do on a day-to-day basis, if you run sprints all the time, you can get exhausted pretty quickly. So what it needs is, yes, you need to have sprints and iterations. That's important. But as well, you need to talk to people and reflect on what you have done and what you want to do next. You need some time to think and intellect on what you would like to do and what others would like to do. So basically, it's about a sustainable pace, right? That's what you want to achieve, a sustainable pace, because then you can run for the long time and for the long term, not if you sprint all the time. A sprint is great, but it's not the solution for everything. And you might see a pattern here. For me, it's always about the gray area between and not the right or left. The other one, number 10, agile equals Scrum, right? A lot of people misinterpret that when we act in an agile way, and let me draw just the equivalent of agile way of doing, I would say that kind of creative squiggle here at the bottom is kind of my agile way of doing things. Agile is navigating a very messy space all the time and reducing uncertainty over time. Scrum is a framework that can help you within that environment to solve specific tasks and specific processes. It's not the same, right? Being agile is not using Scrum. You can be agile without using Scrum at all. You can't use Scrum basically without being agile. But I would always argue agile is not Scrum. Don't forget that, because agile is so much more than Scrum, even though Scrum is a super powerful framework to get something on the page and finish a product. Okay, we have 2 more to go. Hope you can still breathe here in with all the myth. But the 11th one is a modern leader needs to be a coach. I love that sentence when I hear that from managers. Everybody needs to be a coach, right? And as I said, you can disagree with me, but I would say being a coach is not enough as a leader. What we need to have are agile leaders in this world. And an agile leader is defined, of course, by being a coach, right? Carrying people, sorting things out for them, asking the right questions. Of course, that's important, but it's not everything. Because if you only coach, people sometimes miss getting the right direction, knowing what to do. What do I do next? Give me a checklist to do. People will as well miss the alignment and perhaps even saying, this is right, this is wrong from you, because you have a bigger overview as a leader than some people might have. So it's not always just about asking questions. People in some or many situations, you could argue, need as well guidance and somebody who can say, this is how we do it. It's the same thing. Like if you have a heart attack, you don't want to have the physician ask another one, say like, what would you do in this case? This person now is dying. What should we do, right? You want to act, right? There are phases in business as well where you want to have somebody saying what to do. So don't misunderstand the saying of a modern leader needs to be a coach, that being a coach is enough, right? Being an agile leader, that is a good thing. And last but not least, that's the last myth I want to uncover today, is you need to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. I have said that so many times to my clients, and I apologize for that now. I think that's a stupid idea. I think nobody can actually be comfortable being uncomfortable, not knowing what's happening. What you can be in this complex world and in what I've just drawn out for you is you can trust the process. It still is uncomfortable, right? But if you trust the process of embracing that it always ends with the customer, that you need to understand the customer as well, right? That you learn faster, that therefore your mistakes and failures are not that big, that you build your own system, that you have discipline in being creative, right? That you gather evidence, you use design thinking and the good enough mindset of really delivering products as well on a sustainable pace, perhaps even if you are a leader as an agile leader. If you do all of this, right, your work can be way better without all those myths that we have out there about design thinking and customer centricity. Now I need to take a breath and ask you, what are your thoughts when you see that? Any thoughts, questions, reactions? So I see a totally agree and a powerful.
Getting lots of positive reinforcement.
Any questions on this?
Yes. Can you hear me, Nils?
I can't properly hear you.
The audio is not great, Carlos. I don't know if there's anything you can do about that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's a little bit better. Yeah, just see how we go.
The question is, you talk about the agile leaders and everybody needs agile coach. Yeah. But how can I identify when the agile coach becomes outside of the organization and when the organization has the process of maturity and adopt this mindset, start to create its own agile coaching process between the members of the company or the team? Because I believe that not always the team needs an external agile coaching, because this is part of the process.
Carlos, can I ask you to write that down, because I can't understand you properly. I'm sorry. I can't understand what you're saying. The audio quality is not like, could you?
Did you type it into the chat, Carlos, for us?
Yeah.
But your audio seems to be muffled, so we can't make you out, unfortunately. Thank you.
Ben asked, like, is design thinking in 2023 still a thing? Yes, I think, Benjamin. It's the core essence of creativity, how you can do it. If you are not following it, as I said, as the system, but just as a framework that can help you finding ideas to help your customers, right? If you don't follow that as a religion, but see what's good at it, then you can use that, right? Yeah. Okay. And then we have, how do you address the corporate desire to make an MVP production strength? An example, reduce nearly all risk of failure of the experiment. So Mark, that sounds like people are having too big of experiments. So a lot of companies, when they try to gather evidence to understand the customer, right, and to build like something that they want to understand with, they spend too much energy, time, and money in that first experiment, and therefore they want to reduce the risk of the experiment itself, which makes no sense. So what you have to teach them is starting even lower in terms of the expectation, the outcome, as well as the money that they spend. So I think that's important. It's oftentimes misunderstood with, for example, a pilot project or something. It can be something simple like an interview, which costs basically nothing. So don't try to reduce the risk of failure of the experiment. As well as build a culture in your company where failed experiments count as wins for those people who did them, if they provided a good experiment. What I wanted to show you as well with this presentation, and then I go back to the other camera angle. A question to you. I'm not sure if anybody saw that, but did anybody see before that the whole sketch was pre-sketched with pencil here? Did anybody see that? Anybody? Put a 1 in the chat if you saw that. Let's see if somebody saw it. Leah saw it. I saw 1. Okay, they're like, okay, good, wonderful. So some people saw it. Most people, I guess, didn't see it, right? No, there are a lot of no's. So what I did here is I had the whole sketch pre-drawn with pencil on the paper. And I used kind of an eraser that you can't, like, I'm not sure how they are called, still not sure how they're called in English. It's kind of these erasers that you can shape forms and all that kind of stuff. Anybody knows how they are called? I'm not sure. But you can use those to reduce the strength of the stroke of the pencil. You can use that do that with the normal. So normally you would have this type of stroke on the paper, right? This pencil stroke here. What you do with this here is you reduce it to a level where basically in the camera, nobody can see it anymore. Like basically this. And now I still see the sketch, but you don't see it anymore. And I can just draw on top of it. So that way I could tell you the whole story and the whole presentation here with a moldable eraser. Okay, cool. This is a moldable eraser. This way you can present pretty fluently on a piece of paper because you don't have to think about what you want to present. You can just draw it and you always know what's coming next. You can't lose your thread. You can't miss a point because everything is on the paper already. And most people like to see that in that way. And I think it's a good presentation skill to have. And I invite you to copy that for one of your presentations. I've seen that, like I've done that on flip chart as well in a room. So not only virtual, but on a flip chart in a room, people don't see the pencil sketches and they're always amazed when somebody's presenting with a pen in hand. And it's sometimes a bit tricky to draw everything live while you talk because we don't have enough energy for that. Okay, good. Some more questions here. So everybody needs to be an agile coach, but not always the team or organization need an external agile coaching. So there is a difference between an agile coach and an agile leader. So an agile coach is more or less looking at the agile process itself. An agile leader is just the definition of somebody who embraces being a leader as a coach, as an expert in the topic, as a facilitator, as helping people getting to their goal, right? When an organization tries to identify if they need a coaching outside, it's basically when they see that the implementation of the methodology is not working, right? That's when they see it, basically. But I would always try to find training capabilities to build your internal people than organizing externals all the time. Basically, that's what I would do. Okay. How many iterations did you go through to create the final version? So the final version. So this one is kind of a new orientation. So first of like the original one is this one here in this format here. So it's a bit of like a different kind because it's for another type of picture. But I think to create this type, I am using like multiple iterations that I want to show you in a second, actually, based on this picture as well. So we will come to that in a second. A light gray pencil would work as well. Yes, definitely. I have an exercise for you. And for those who are in the camera, I prepare you that you should hold something up in a second as well. So everybody who's here, who's listening to the call as well, please grab a piece of paper if you can, or it can be a sticky note or whatever it is, something you can draw on, and any pen that you have at hand. So grab something to draw on. It will be a very short exercise, just 3 seconds. And I invite you to do that with me because it's a fun exercise. Okay, everybody ready? I have a few videos here. That's good. Okay. Within 3 seconds, and I mean, you have 3 seconds time to fulfill the task, right? There's not waiting for me to count down to start, but basically my countdown is the time that you have to do the exercise. Within 3 seconds, please draw a small house. Draw a small house. 3, 2, 1, over. Wonderful. Try to show it to us. If you have like a screensaver, like the blurred background, it might be a bit tricky to show. Everybody else can hold it up. So what do you see? What do we see? We see a lot of small drawings. of small houses. So Anne and Benoit and Benjamin. Yes, there are a lot of small drawings of a small house, because a small house basically is defined by having a door and a window and a ceiling or something. As well, the majority of you, basically everybody I saw, has drawn a pointy roof house, did you? Right? Let's try that again. Next step is, please draw the surroundings of the house within 3 seconds. The surroundings of the house. 3, 2, 1, over. Show it again, please. Show it again. There's a tree. There's another tree, a fence, a sea or a lake, a tree in a city. Oh, there's a whole city with Ben in the background. Okay, cool. So most of you, what did most of you draw? A tree, right? Perhaps a fence. Some people draw like a road to the house or something. What does that teach us, that quick exercise? It teaches us that the first idea that everybody has in mind of a house is that pointy roof house. And that goes the same when you ask people for new ideas when it comes to being creative and innovation and solving a complex challenge. So what will people nowadays say if they say, for example, what would be a nice idea for a business model? I would say 10 years ago, everybody would say, let's build an app or a platform or a subscription model, right? Nowadays, they would say, let's do something with AI, this and that, and here and there, right? Those are all pointy roof house ideas. That's the first idea that everybody has. It's not unique, it's not original, and everybody shares the same idea. So what I do when I have workshops, I invite people to do exactly this exercise that I did with you together. And along the workshop, I always point back to them and say, that sounds like a good idea, but if I'm honest, I think that is a pointy roof house. And they know what I'm saying, right? Oh yeah, we need to develop something new. Because, and this is the last task I ask you to draw right now, I would like to give you even a bit more time. I give you now 6 seconds, okay? And I would ask you to come up with different types of houses. Please draw different types of small houses within 6 seconds, as many as you can. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, over. Hold them up for me, please, if you can. So I see with Leah, yeah, that's a flat house, a row of houses. There's an igloo, a tent. See like a flat. Yeah, it's wonderful. So many creative ideas. There's even a tree house, right? Those are the ideas that we're striving for when we talk about creativity, not the pointy roof house, but all the other types of houses. And if you keep that in mind, I think that's very important for to keep our creativity alive. Okay, cool. Remember, you can ask questions in between. We're jumping a bit here and there. I'm doing some exercise with you. As you never know how many people we are, I didn't build in breakout sessions this time, but more these kind of presentation back and forth and doing some questions. We talked about, and let me share my camera again. We talked about this picture and how many iterations I needed. And I wanted to share the process with you because I think it uncovers how simple it is to create these pictures. And there's no magic behind it. There's just a process, right? Trust the process. And how it all starts is with sticky notes. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear sticky notes anymore, but I really enjoy using sticky notes. In my case, I'm using Strategist, which are electrostatic Post-its, basically. And they're nice because they're coming as well in the super small size, so you can use them on paper, on an A4. And they kind of stick, but you can basically move them around. But they would, of course, as well, for example, stick here on my hand, you see, without the glue. So that's pretty nice. I use those, but you can use normal sticky notes as well, or you take notes right now just as we go. So when I tried to come up with the myth that I had, I would start with the kind of sticky notes and just write down all the myth that I had in mind, right? I would write them down, and I'm just taking placeholders for written words here. Write them all down that I have in my head. Perhaps I would get rid of some because I say that's not what I want. That's not interesting. I take another one. I take another one. So I did that. What I did then, once I got, like, I don't use 12 now because it's just too much on this paper now, but when I had all my topics, I was thinking of how are they somehow related to each other? Can I somehow cluster them? So first I just harvested and I cluster them. And I thought, like, there are specific topics that are more related to each other. For example, the customer centricity piece, the agile piece, the design thinking piece. So they somehow go together. So I would then use basically another color in the best case. Let me just grab another color here to make a note and say, okay, we have these three main topics, let's say it like that: the design thinking, the customer centricity, and the agile. And perhaps I would mark them with two very quick strokes to say, these are definitely my main categories, right? So that's how I would start. One thing that you should notice here right now is very important. I don't use multicolored sticky notes. So all my content is yellow. All my topics are orange, which is super important because I can be very clear on the content and can shift them around without creating a visual mess of thinking, okay, here's the green sticky note, there's the brown sticky note, how do they relate to each other? It's very clear just from the coloring that here's content and there are categories. What I then started to think of is, how do they relate to each other? It's sometimes a bit tricky to get a grasp of your problem if you see everything all the time. So what I like to do is I move the details to the side, get rid of them, and just stay with the categories. And then I think, okay, we have the customer centricity, we have agile, we have design thinking. How are they related? They could be related. Let me just use another color. They could be related somehow in a process, in a timeline, right? I could sort and say, like, okay, first start with the customer and then agile is something and it's been followed by design thinking, or is it this way around? So perhaps that. So I figure, that's not how they are sorted together. Is it a process, like, for example, a circle? Like I have in my book, Creating Clarity, the understand, create, share cycle. Is that a cycle of customer centricity, agile, design thinking? Doesn't ring a bell to me. So it's not a circular thing. It's not a time thing. It's not really a difference thing where I would say, like, look, I think we need to separate them just in fields and say customer centricity is one, agile is one, design thinking is one. It's not really how it describes. But if I am honest and see all of that, so it's not about the difference. It's not about a time, but it's about relationship. How are they related to each other? Customer centricity is somehow in the center because it's everything and nothing, but it's basically everything. It ends with the customer. And agile and design thinking are somehow sorted around it. This is difficult to display only with the categories, but I would say it's basically customer centricity is in the center. The rest is basically loosely sorted around that. Okay, so that will be my first step. Now what I do is I bring back the details: agile, design thinking, customer centricity. And I can sort them and say, okay, here's, like, it ends with the customer. Then we have the evidence that is close to agile, but perhaps I move agile over here, design thinking down here, right? So, and I move them around how they relate to each other until I find a structure where I say, look, this is now a structure, and I take away the categories if I don't need them. This is now a structure how I like the things placed on the paper. Next step, to create a visual, what we did is finding pictures. You might have recognized on the sticky notes, I did something very, very important, which is I left open a part of the sticky note, right? On every sticky note, I have spare space, 1/3, I would say, of the sticky note. I always leave open here because that open space allows me to draw something. Customer, idea, right? Whatever it is, I can draw something in front of my writing. So basically, it opens up the whole new world for me to be able to visualize my thoughts. And if I miss any drawing, I would just draw something right on the paper and see how it works, or I would just take another sticky note and then move them around until I find the right structure. And only after that, I would create the final piece, the final structure of saying, okay, I think this works. Now I can start drawing it on paper. I would take that away and I would start drawing the customer on the paper, right in the center with the arrows and all that kind of stuff, and starting drawing that out piece by piece from the sticky notes. That's my process. First, gathering content with the sticky notes, categorizing them, getting rid of the details, sorting them in a structure that works. Either it's time related on a timeline, either it's different in terms of they are separate on the paper, or they are in relationship to each other. And therefore I sort them. Those are basically the three things how you could sort pictures on a paper. And then I draw them piece by piece. Make sense? Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Good. Wonderful. We have a bit of time left to enable us to actually draw something on the paper, right? Because I'm not sure if everybody is capable of drawing yet or thinks you are capable of drawing, but I would like to show you at least a few drawings today that you could leverage very quickly, as well as showing you that I only used a few drawings basically on my map that I showed you today. So I would invite you to grab a pen again, right? And draw with me. You can use any pen, right? Right now I'm using this permanent marker because it was easier to draw on the steadies with that. Sometimes I use a pencil, sometimes I use a fine liner, a color, could be a ball pen, doesn't matter too much what you use, right? It's just about getting your thoughts on paper. We're not talking about creating anything artful. But when we think back of the map that I did, the most challenging drawing I did was the person. And when I draw these kind of people, I start with the head, and I invite you to follow me along. So I start with the head and I draw a shoulder underneath. Shoulder should be roughly the size of the head, not much more, otherwise it looks a bit odd. And I'm just drawing two lines downward that are slightly bent, not straight, but slightly bent, so it looks like a human body. And normally I don't really know what to do with my arms or the arms in general. So I would have one arm at least at the hip and perhaps another arm that's just at an angle, another line in the horizontal, and then having a hand. So that would be my person. Hopefully simple enough for you as well to copy. You could, of course, add other types of hands. So for example, you could add this type of arm and a hand to let them point somewhere, or straight arm and just a stroke upwards to say no to something. Basically, that will be the most things that I use. For perhaps we have a thumbs up, so you do another straight line upward, and this kind of whatever this shape is to show it's a thumbs up. And those are all the shapes of hands and arms that I normally use for my people, right? What did I have as well is to indicate it's a customer. I added a crown on top, so it's clear it's a customer. And what I did as well, I leveraged speech bubbles a lot in that drawing. So I had a speech bubble that says something, and I often draw them with this V, starting with the V, and then draw the speech bubble around. And I had a thinking bubble, which have these bubbles coming out of the head, overlapping perhaps, and then having those curved lines. So we have a speech bubble and a thought bubble. What do we have as well? We had simple things like, for example, like a check mark, right? That helps to have. We had a present or a gift, depending on where in the world you are, like a gift that in this case the customer doesn't like because it's too perfect. Should have been a prototype, I told you. We did as well. What did we do as well? We had, what did we have as well? We have very simple people. Like this is a more complex person to draw. We had a group of people that just looked like a few curves with some balls on top. That would be simple. We had the heart to indicate somebody likes something. We had some strokes to indicate somebody's saying something, perhaps like an exclamation mark or a question mark. I did draw the squiggle for the creative process. I as well drew like other arrows, like a straight arrow like this. We drew a funnel arrow like this. These are elements I used, of course, and definitely because all we do is we have an idea, which is a light bulb. It's an open circle with 3 lines underneath, just a thing in the middle, and then let it glow, right? We had that. We had the rules where I used like a paragraph from the law, or at least I tried to draw one of these. We had technology, and I drew something that in former days that was like the USB sign or something like that. And basically, I think we had a globe as well. So everything is global nowadays. So we used like a circle and something around that to indicate this is all global. And I guess we had as well one more element that was we drew all of this together. So let's draw a pencil. Yeah, like this. And you might find 1 or 2 other icons that I did draw. But basically that's it. I think we can draw one more sophisticated thing together, which is the paper plane. So we have the paper plane. For the paper plane, you draw one triangle like this, a second one on the side, and then another one down here. And then you have your paper plane. So it's all we did on this piece. I didn't use more drawings than that on this piece. It just looks so complex because I have many of them mixed together in different ways. But basically, all I used were these items. And that's something I want you to take away from today, right? It's not about being able to draw a lot of things. It's not about being able to draw a lot of things great. It's not about inventing new pictures on the fly. It's just about how do you sort just a few icons in a new way all the time. And that's how you create clarity with visuals, right? Okay, I need to take another breathe and a sip here. I'm happy to take your questions right now and see what's on your head. For everything I talked about, the myth that we talked about, the process, how to develop a picture as well, the very speedy drawing lesson that we did here right now. While you type your questions, if you happen to have nice pens, so on this paper, on an A4 paper, I really enjoy the Tombow ABT pens, right? Tombow ABT. And in this case, I'm using the N75. It's a gray that I can use to, I'm not sure how well you see that in the camera. Perhaps somebody could point me to if you can see the gray on the camera. Can you see the gray?
All good.
Yeah, cool. With that gray, you can add shadows to your drawing to just make it a bit more pop out of the paper. And what I do is I add the gray always either on the bottom or on the right of my items. And if it's a flat thing like an arrow or a piece of paper, I would draw the shadow outside. if it's a more volumetric thing, like a person, I would draw the shadow inside to indicate it has volume. And with that, perhaps you see that already while I do that here. We add a lot more depth to our drawing, and it looks just a bit nicer. But as I said, it's not always about the nice look. It's more about the content that you do. Right. Okay. Let's see what we have as questions.
This one come in now. Yeah.
I
When
leave
you
that
had
picture
us going into the mode of being creative, what did the trick? What was your question to us that invite our mind to be more creative? Could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. Let me just get rid of that picture here. So I think what I did, first of all, I put you under time pressure, which is always an unfair thing. But when it comes to creativity, I'm a big fan of constraints. So when you want to be creative and you sit down with an empty piece of paper or empty sticky notes, and perhaps you have a very loose topic, it might be very hard for you to come up with good ideas because everything is possible. But what I learned as a designer is that I appreciate design constraints. I would ask, can I use the whole paper? What kind of pens can I use? How much time do I have? Is there a specific topic or problem I should solve? So the more specific my briefing gets, the more specific the constraints are, the more creative I am. And with what you did here with being creative with the house, first of all, like the first exercise was just about the time constraint. You don't think, you just do something, right? In 3 seconds, you don't think about the house. You just put anything that comes to your mind. When I gave you 6 seconds, that's double the time than before. You had more time to become creative. As well, I briefed you before and said, I want to see more than just a pointy roof house. So that was your constraint. Don't do the same thing again. Find something new. Surprise me. So one thing is constraints and one thing is motivation. When you think of constraints, just as another example, what I often do when it comes to business modeling, finding new business models, I ask people to create business models based on a specific constraint. For example, think of your business as if you were Tupperware. Tupperware's business model for a long time, and still in parts, is based on a sales force that's earning nothing. So that's a free sales force that's doing Tupperware parties to sell Tupperware stuff. So how would your business model look like if you would act like Tupperware? How would the same business model look like if you would act like a venture capitalist? Meaning you invest in multiple small businesses to run your own business. Does that spark any ideas? How would your business work if you would use the model of Nespresso, where you sell a coffee machine and then have people hooked with the capsules, right? And they buy the capsules again and again. If you give people those constraints, they become very creative in their own manners often enough.
So another good one from Marta asking, how can you use design thinking in our community lives? What are some other than corporate areas, so yeah, non-corporate areas that could benefit from this type of approach?
Yeah. So again, don't misunderstand design thinking as the strict process of empathize, status quo, right? Ideate, prototype, test. I'm not a fan of that. But if you think of design thinking as a mindset of questioning everything that comes in front of you, of asking, could we do this differently? Of asking, is there something that we could do better? Or is there a problem that we didn't uncover yet? Is there somebody not happy yet? Whatever it is. Or do we just have fun, new ideas to talk about? If you embrace the mindset of design thinking, you see the world in a different way. You start seeing opportunities everywhere popping up. You see challenges that you could solve. When it comes to community lives, right? If it comes to the family, could we do something different? Could we break out of our routine to do something differently than we do normally? Why is everybody, I don't know, exhausted after school and we do the homework right away? Should we change the process? Should we do the homework in a different space? Should we have other training facilities at home or possibilities, or all these kind of things can help us a lot. Or just giving you a personal experience that we are running through right now. So we have just 3 years ago, discovered that 2 of our kids are autistic, and I myself too. So it's a fresh insight. So we needed to recreate the structure of our home in terms of how do we live together? What are the things that we do? And just currently, we're using design thinking at home to develop cards to help us organize the household and help everybody understand, what do you do next? What's your next task? Did you think of everything to take to your school? We creating visual cards, helping our kids just manage normal life. So that helps us a lot, this creative process of solving things and always seeing opportunities to be creative. I think that's how we should use design thinking, right? More questions?
No, nothing so far, but I loved what you said. That was fantastic. I think the power of this stuff is in the communication, isn't it? You can use it as a communication tool. Oh, there's something popped in at the end. I think it's just a thank you. Oh, okay, right, great.
So drop me more questions if you have more, or if you want to draw something and you don't know how to draw it, or whatever it is. You can throw anything at me.
Jim's got his hand up.
Oh yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, Jim, go for it.
Thanks, Seth. Holger, thank you very much for your presentation. So the example you've drawn us today seems fairly high level in the concept that you're trying to get across. And I'm sure many of us have used that, some kind of high level representation when we're working with clients. I certainly have. How deep into the client experience do you go with the graphical approach? Is there a point that you get to where this runs out and can't be applied anymore, or is it endless as to the applications here?
Oh, that's a great question. I take that question and I built in another question, if you allow, Jim. And there's a question: how do you draw change from Ben? And I will take both together and try to give you an answer. I'm not sure if I understood your question in the best way, but I would try to answer it in the best way, and we see what comes out. And you ask again if I didn't hit every point, okay? But so one, like, change as a topic is a very generic topic, isn't it? Right? If you say change, like, what does it mean? It means nothing at all. You could draw change by saying, okay, it's a square changing into a circle. That's change, basically, you could say. You could as well say that change is having a world map and saying, okay, we have a world map, something that I use often with different types of lands and islands and all that kind of stuff. And perhaps change is that you say, where are you right now? Where do you want to get if you see that? I would say, let's get to the island here. Perhaps there's some treasure on the island. That's what we want to get. And we need to identify as well, how do we get there? Like over the sea and another land here, and over the sea and the wrong island and another island. It's a process of change as well, right? There could be a picture for change. Jim, what you asked right now is, this is all very high level conceptual still, right? You could ask, for example, I ask my clients, where are you right now? Where do you want to be? And I ask them basically to then write down, how is it today? What's your situation? If it's business, we ask for the business model, or how they act right now, or what they do on a daily basis. If it's private life, it's What are the challenges that you have right now that you would like to change? How do you imagine the future, right? We write that down. And you see it's not a drawing, it's written words that deepen the exercise, I would say, because the words are always, the drawings are mostly a big picture. And with the words, we can dive deeper and say, okay, this is where we are right now, the challenges that we have, this is where we want to get. And along the way, we see some challenges and opportunities that we have, and we write them down as well. So basically what we do is from a big picture, a literal picture, we go to words that make it more explicit. What does that mean for me, my change? Once we have done that, I would say, okay, we have done the big picture. We have like a bit of a deep dive on the situation. Now let's take another visual, and that's not basically a drawing, but that might be a visual tool where we say, look, when you look at what you have right now, what's holding you back to change? So we would grab the speedboat. In my, I often use the speedboat as a tool. It's a template where you have a bit of like the water here, you have a speedboat on top, somebody sitting in it, and you have a lot of anchors holding that speedboat back. And we ask again, like, look, we looked at your change map. We saw what you want to achieve. This is your future, right? The future. And this is the as is, like the current. Let's make a C. So let's do the future. If the future is what you want to achieve, basically what's holding you back right now to be just there, why aren't you in the future? So people write down all the blockers that they have that holding them back. Okay, put that here. Okay, those are the blockers. Now, as the next exercise, that's a picture again with written words on it. We take that picture away. We only take the words, the blockers, and we have a conversation on how could you get rid of those blockers? What's really behind those blockers? You could talk about more in depth about the blocker, like all the things that are bad and holding you back and you can't overcome, right? You write all those down. But then you write as well down, how could I solve this? What could I do actually to solve those things? Perhaps I take those again. Once I've done that with a customer, talked about those things. And if that's a single customer, we have a one-on-one. If that's a group of 50 people, you can do group exercise around that. We write all those down. How could we get rid of our blockers? And what we do now is we take that. I have a bit of a mess on my screen, on my desk now, sorry. We take that and we bring back the world map. And we take all the things that we identified as how could we overcome our blockers on our journey. And we put them on a time frame and say, first, I need to do this. Second, I need to do that. Third, I need to do that before I can reach my future state. And so forth. Is that like, what could come in the way? You could put, again, some more blockers of saying, now that sounds like a good plan. But if you say this is, I don't know, 2 years of a process, do you really know what's happening in a year? You don't know. So perhaps this is not yet sure. You need to find evidence for that still. This is pretty clear. This is pretty clear. So execute on that. If we are clear on this and we say execute, and this is my last point, Jim, and then I stop, then we build a list and say, this is what we do to achieve our goals. So it's basically just a checklist, not a visual. It's just, I mean, it's a visual by definition, but it's a checklist that we do. So what I'm saying is I'm always using sequences of those methodologies. And I'm not sure if I'm answering right your question, Jim, you can give me an indication perhaps if that's interesting for you. But what I basically did is I started with the world map, right? That's the world map. From the world map, we looked at what's holding us back with the speedboat, right? From the speedboat, we found some blockers that we identified, that dive deeper, but as well found some solutions for it. From that, we went back to the world map, right? We brought those onto the world map. From that, we decided on, do we have evidence or not, basically on the world map. And from that, we delivered a checklist how we could take action on those items. And that's how I would say I navigate with my clients back and forth. Sometimes it's a conversation, sometimes it's a list, sometimes it's a visual, but it's always kind of a sequence of basically tools. And a tool might be just the right question, right, to ask to solve those challenges. Does that make sense? And did it answer your question in the first place?
Yeah, I think it does to a certain extent. It sounds like you're using the visuals to drive clarity in language.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
then eventually, ultimately, you want to get to an action list that people can go and work on.
Absolutely. If you don't leave people with an action, you will basically lose them, right? Because that's what people thrive for. They have to have something to do.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's basically how I would draw change as well, Ben. I cheated a bit, but yeah, that's how I would draw change. We have more questions.
Nothing else in there at the moment. How did Benjamin feel about your visual of change?
Yeah.
Give a thumbs up.
Wonderful. So while we're waiting for more questions, please feel free that like to ask more questions. I've brought a gift. So let me just, I think we can do that right now before we are close to the hour or a half hour and don't have time anymore. So as I said, when the pandemic hit, I started to create these drawing books, and I wanted to give you one of the drawing books as a gift today. So here's the link in the chat for the first drawing book. That's a direct download link. No sign up required. It's just like hit the link and download it. Feel free to use it. I would encourage you to use it to, for example, draw one of the drawings every day. That takes you 2 to 3 minutes and will get you far ahead in terms of your drawing practice. So that will be my first thing that I have for you. So please feel free to do that. If you want to dive deeper into what I just showed with the sequences and the tools and the clarity from Jim's question, I have my book, the Creating Clarity book, which is here. And there is as well a link. You need to copy and paste that. Hopefully that works. If you use the code Future of Work -10, you get a 10% off in my store. And I still work with Alex, yes. Not as a graphic recorder anymore though, Ben. But yeah. So feel free to go to my store and grab Creating Clarity for 10% off if you like. Basically, a lot of the things that we talked about today are in there, but not the myth. The myths are fresh and new, and basically the first time that I presented them to an audience. So you could let me know if they resonated with you. So did you take away some insights from the myth, I hope, as well as how I turned them around to the overall picture. We will find a way to share the pictures with you that I've drawn today. Most likely not all the messy drawings, but I can take photos of them too and show them to you. I think I'm just talking while people perhaps have another question or not, but you saw me drawing a lot today, and a lot of those drawings were really messy, right? Not really nice. Not sure how this kind of drawing, I hope in the moment that I presented this drawing to you, it created clarity for you, but it was not a nice drawing. It's not a beautiful drawing. It's not refined. It's just a very quick sketch on the paper to get my thought across. And I think that's the crucial thing about creating clarity, about visual tools, about what I do, is just getting your thoughts onto the paper, not keeping them in your head or just trying to talk, because often enough we don't understand each other properly if we just talk, I think that's important. We have another 10 minutes. If you have more questions, I'm happy to take those questions.
I just want to add on this, what you last said. It's really nice because once Brandy Agerbeck said she has also two types of drawing. Like sometimes if she just wants to understand something, or like when it's about the process to understand or presenting a process, it can look really messy and like really simple and really dirty. And sometimes your drawing is rather has more the appearance of a product, like in a sketch or graphic recording or illustration. Then it's of course nice. But if you want to understand things, and it's also for me as a professional graphic recorder, when I take notes, like in a session like this, I mean, it kind of looks nice now, but it also kind of messy for my for my idea. But it's totally fine, and it also can give you freedom. That always doesn't have to be perfect and nice and a shiny product. Sometimes it's just for understanding, and therefore it's totally fine. It's just lines, some dots, some crossed out words, some whatever.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, want to build on that very quickly while you say that is what I often say is if you put that onto an axis, right, of value, right? Here's value, and here's refinement. Refinement means refinement of your drawing, right? Basically, on the right here, there will be, I can't draw a perfect picture right now because I'm in a hurry and I'm presenting and stuff, but let's say you have this is supposed to be a very nice drawing of somebody, right? Very refined picture. On the left, you have like a more or less messy person to just clarify their thoughts. So here's an unrefined drawing, there's a refined drawing, right? And here we have value. If you want to present an idea, pitch it, for example, to an audience that is not completely used to your presentation style, and it's very important to you, I would say the value of your drawings is more like this, where you have the highest value for a more or less refined drawing, right? Where you present something and you want to be very clear on this and don't make mistakes and all that kind of stuff. So that's for presentation, right? Or pitching, let's say pitching. But if you want to have co-creation, for example, or you want to have, as you said, Ben, problem solving, right? Problem solving, then I would say the value is more like this. Because the more time you spend in refining your drawing, the less time you spend in thinking, the less able you are to do iterations because you don't want to lose that nice drawing. The uglier the drawing is, the better to think and to problem solve, because then you can throw it away and do something else with it. So yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. We have Anna.
Cool, super cool idea, super cool drawing. I love the model. Like a $1 million model here. Really.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anna, go ahead. And Sam. Hi.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So yeah, fab session. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm just had an observation on your use of a map to help people thinking in terms of where they are now and where they might want to get to, and how they might want to get there. I just wondered if you'd heard of Tupaya's map.
No.
Okay. I'll post a link in the chat.
Oh yeah, please post it.
To Wikipedia. So this is, I really like this, and this was shown to me by a consultant that I worked with on a Futures Thinking project. So I should mention his name. His name was Matt Finch. And this really helped our thinking, because this Tupaya was an explorer a long time ago in I think the 1700s. He actually worked with Captain Cook, helped him navigate. But his view of how to get from A to B was via navigating using the sun. So the way he created his maps is quite different from any way that anyone in the in current times would create a map. And in fact, when his maps were discovered, people found it quite difficult to understand what they were representing and whether they were actually true future life and so on. But then they realised how he'd actually put it together. So yeah, I love maps. I grew up with them. My dad is a geologist, so we had lots of them at home, and I think they're so helpful to help people's thinking. So yeah, thank you. And I just thought I'd share.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I want to connect the maps to the question of how do we get people in innovation workshops from pointed house ideas to unique ideas. And another type of using a map is that you draw a map, and I call that the grand tour, right? You in the past, there were these like the rich people were sent on grand tour to learn about all the different cultures in the world, or basically in Europe, and they were visiting all the other rich people. And what you could do with the map is an imaginary map. You could put other companies on that map and say, how would Apple solve this problem? How would Google solve this problem? It's different, right? They're different companies. How would Microsoft solve this problem? How would Nestle solve this problem? How would a startup solve this problem? And you wander across the map, and you can print that map like huge if you want, or even lay it out on the ground, and people actually walk the map. And they say, if I stand here and I imagine I'm being somebody from Apple, I would solve this problem in this and this and this and this way. And therefore, you get multiple new ideas that you could build into your own innovation network, for example, to test. But then there's a misunderstanding that an innovation workshop leads to unique ideas, because what an innovation workshop leads to is some new ideas that you need to build experiments for, that you test with the market, and then you develop them further and further based on evidence, and that brings the uniqueness to it. It's your experience within the market with your ideas, not the ideas themselves. They are basically worth nothing, right? It's about the experiments that you do with them. I think that's important.
I think that's a fantastic note, I think, to finish your book. Thank you for that. It was perfect timing. We've got like 4 minutes or so, so I think that was a really nice end there. I'm going to start bringing it to a close there because we have a few minutes left. I think firstly, just to thank you for a fabulous session, Holger. Really enjoyed it. I've already grabbed your daily drawings. I think I did one of your courses before a few years ago, which really got me back into it. And I've done this little, you can see I took my blur off.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Just for you to say, great session. And I really must do more visual. So there you go.
Yeah,
so
that's
absolutely fabulous. So thank you for everything. Great participation from our audience this evening. And I think everybody got a lot out of it. So thank you kindly, and thanks for sharing the discount for your book and your 1000 daily drawings. I think people get a lot of value out of that. And hopefully they can find value in applying these sorts of tools and techniques in their own day-to-day work to communicate, convey messages, and bring people to a common understanding. So thank you again. Really appreciate that. Just a couple of other announcements, folks. Our next session, Holger talked tonight about autism. The next session is with Kanan, and she'll be talking about neurodiversity, invisible gifts and challenges. So if that's of interest to you, do please sign up for that. We still have spaces available for that, but we're going fast. And then you've probably also seen our one in November with Noel Warnell, who will be helping us improve our throughput of reading. Most of us have heavy books backlogs that we don't get through. So, I think that'll be excellent. Paula's going to share some information around Lean Agile Scotland, which I'm sure most of you will know. If you're based in Scotland, is next week. Still an opportunity to go along. There's still our tickets available, and we have a discount for our community. So she's going to share some information around that. And I think previously we also mentioned Amir's workshop, so there's still an opportunity to grab the last few tickets for that. And there's I think there's information coming in now. Thank you, Paula. And lastly, our friends at Pro Kanban are going to be in Edinburgh later this month as well. And they've got a couple of great events lined up. There's one which will be a fireside chat talk from Dan Vacanti, who some of you might know. I've known Dan for a few years now. And they're also doing a drinks reception, a happy hour later in the week. So that's later in the month. I've dropped the links in for those. So if that's of interest to you, yeah, sign up. Colleen and Dan will be there, and I'm looking forward to seeing them both. So yeah, lots of great things coming up. Sign up for what's of interest to you, and hopefully we'll see some of you at the next few events coming up. We lead towards the end of the year, because we're already into September. How scary is that? And with that, I'm going to bring it to a close. Thanks again to our speaker, Holger, for a fabulous session. Thank you all for joining us, and have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you happen to be. Thanks again, folks. Stay safe.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much. Good night.
Thank you.